for the university, so I'll run the recording. You should have all just gotten a notice that I'm recording. Okay.
Excuse me, is there is this downloadable or is this just in the screen share?
It will just be in the screen share. I believe BCC is planning on making the presentation available.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. All right, so we are here for Business Planning 101 for the creatives. Hopefully that's what everybody signed up for. My name is Mary Ellen Defrias. I'm the administrator for the Greater Attleboro-Taunton Regional Transit Authority. I also am an instructor for BCC for a variety of classes, and they had asked me if I would be willing to come in and do this kind of new project that we're doing with Fall River Creative Arts. So what I'm hoping is we could just take a few minutes just to go through. We did the attendance, but to find out your name, organization, and kind of like what are you hoping to get out of tonight? And I'm going to go off of the way you are on my screens. So Beatrice, you're the first one up.
Hi, so I'm an artist and writer based in New Bedford, and I was pointed toward this class because I received an ArtNet grant from the city, or from the New Bedford Economic Development Council, and I would love to have some information that would guide me toward submitting the business plan that is a condition of completing that grant and receiving that funding.
Okay. Perfect. Erin, you're next.
Hello, my name is Aaron Custodio. I'm a comedian and actor. I'm based here in Fall River, and I had in a improvisational comic, I had some ideas about motivational speaking and leveraging comedy and humor and using it in schools and professional settings. It's just in its infancy. My exposure to this class was through my collaboration or some work I'm hoping to do with the Ignition Space through the Fall River Arts and Cultural Council. Actually closely related to sort of the bones of this idea that I kind of came up with because I figured I would want to have something solid for this course. And I also did sign up today for your grant writing course, which may be helpful to Beatrice's grant writing course for creatives and nonprofits, I believe.
Yep.
It begins November 12th.
That's actually when I teach a lot for BCC. That seems to be very popular.
Yeah. So I feel like I just came here to learn mostly. You know, a lot of creatives have a lot of ideas and sometimes just lack the resources and the confidence to hear more. So that's what I'm here to do.
And you also tend to be spending your time being creative, and this is not a whole lot of creativity in some of the stuff we're going to be talking about. So.
Oh, I also majored in business in school, but I don't know.
There you go. All right. Next, I have Brittany.
Hello. Sorry, my webcam is broken. So my name is Brittany Harvey, and I am the director of the Fall River Museum of Contemporary Art. We're a newer nonprofit in Fall River. We just opened our new space at 44 Troy Street, and I'm here to just gain, any knowledge in the process of creating a real business plan for the nonprofit. And I'm also an artist myself, a practicing artist. So, any knowledge I gain here in context of the nonprofit is also going to go towards a personal practice as well. So,
excellent. All right, John.
Hi, I'm John Mello. I've worked for a pretty long time as a motion graphics designer and animator and some visual effects, and primarily in a freelance role. And I am interested in looking at other avenues of creativity and monetizing that for some of the interests I have at the stage of the career I'm in. I'm kind of looking to diversify some of the things I participate in. So my wife forwarded me some of this information, and you don't know what you don't know. So I figured I would attend and learn a little bit about some things that I may not be aware of as far as, you know, I've done it for a long time, but, you know, my approach may not necessarily be, you know, current for today's market. So I'm interested in learning a little bit more about all the different businessy end of things that I'm not necessarily too in tune with. I'm more of the creative person.
Okay, thank you for that. Tao, I see you put a message in the chat. Did you want to talk, or would you prefer to just keep it? Oh, you can't talk. There we go. Okay, so we will skip you. I next have Elaine up. Can you hear? Oh, we can't hear you. I see you came off mute.
We'll just use
Okay.
my mic.
I'm actually here with Beatrice. So we're gonna use their mic. Yeah, I'm a visual artist, mostly textiles, but dabbling in a lot of other things too. Currently, I'm an artist in residence at the New Bedford Whaling National Historical Park, but looking to fill in the gaps through selling my art and doing some freelance. So looking for some business acumen.
Okay. Next I have Temple. Temple, we can't hear you. Oh,
You hear me now?
yes, we can hear you now. Sounds like it might be a mic connection issue. We can't hear you now. All right. I'll let you figure out your mic, because we did hear you a second, and we'll go to Kareem.
Hey, Mary. So I can't come off the camera right now. But yeah, I am a creative artist. I am a dancer, actor. I'm signed to 3 agencies as a model. I'm currently have my own podcast, which is Positive Pathways Podcast. I also have a media company. It's called Rhythm Addict TV. It's for dancers. And we're now transitioning from like being monetized on YouTube to having our own show on Roku TV. So I just want to, you know, we're in talks with like different partnerships with, you know, other executives. So I just want to, you know, have more knowledge and coming up with like business plans, you know, being well diverse in like contracts and such. So yeah, that's the reason why I'm here.
Okay. Perfect. Jamie?
Hello. So my name is Jamie Belbarena, and I've worked in the South Coast region in the social sector for over 15 years. I've done a lot of independent work as a consultant and a social cultural creative. So my background in my work is emphasizes health and environmental justice and having culture responsive approaches to communal healing. So I wanted to get more of a background on entrepreneurial skills and how I can align my work and also have that business mindset to it. So I've signed up for most of the workshops that are being offered through this series, and happy to be here.
All right, excellent. I think I just let Brian in, and I don't think we've had Brian in the class. And I think other than Brian, have I identified everyone else who's here today? If I didn't get you, could you let me know? All right, so the last one is Brian. Brian, if you could give me your last name for the attendance list.
I told you. Actually, this is Jenny. I'm just logging in with my husband's computer
Oh,
because
okay.
my computer is not working. This is Jenny Gonzalez.
Okay. All right, perfect.
Sorry, I missed everybody's presentation.
It's okay. We may have some time at the end. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I do want to leave time for questions and stuff at the end. I'm just gonna shut this door. And we will get going. So tonight, the way we've set this up is we're going to talk about what is a business plan. There are two basic types of plans. I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about the traditional business plan. And then at the end of the night, we'll touch on lean startups. There is a nonprofit plan we'll get into a little bit there. Most banks still don't really like them. You would really only use them if you're applying for grants. So if you're looking for bank funding, they're looking for either a lean plan, which is kind of like the light version, or a traditional business plan. I've got 5 tips for creating these plans. We'll go through the 9 steps that are in the plan. Like I said, we touch on the lean startup, which is just the light version of the details we're going to go through. So you can decide kind of after you've heard both of these, what works best for you. Then we'll end with some tips of the trade to kind of strengthen and find the information that you need. And then we'll take questions at the end. So what is a business plan? Let's start with the basics here. A good business plan will take you through the stages to start and manage your business. You can kind of think of it as your roadmap. You will have different business plans at different parts of your business. So when you're starting, your basic point is to get the business up and running. Later on, you may decide you want to expand or diversify. And so it's always a good idea to come back to the basics and do another business plan that will help you grow. What we hope it does is get you to think through all of the key elements of business, okay? You're probably very good at the part of the business that is the creative part that you're doing, but we also need you to think about some of the other parts like marketing and finance. And we will delve into those sections. There's other parts of this class that will deal with project management, finance, and marketing. Not every successful business starts with a business plan, but in order to set yourself up for success, we strongly encourage you to do the research, figure out the information. And if you can't afford to bankroll your business and you are going to have to go to a bank or a granting facility is going to want to see the business plan. You really want to think of it as a way to demonstrate that you have thought about all of these various parts of the business and that you are what we call bankable, or you are a strong partner for a finance company to come into, okay? It's very hard to get banks to part with their money sometimes, okay? They don't like risk, and a new business is a risk. So the more that you can kind of help set the stage that you've thought these things through, you have realistic projections, you can show them how you came up with your numbers, the more confidence they will have in wanting to help you. All right. So the 3 main purposes behind your business plan is to clarify your plans for growth, to understand your financial needs, and to attract funding from investors or to secure a business loan. All right. We are going to be talking about different documents throughout this, that will, but here we're talking about documents that you want to incorporate into your plan. You want to talk about your product, right? What are you making? What are you providing? You know, what is your company able to do? Who's running the company? Who's helping you run the company? How are you moving forward? Okay. How are you financing it? How have you been financing it up until now? And how will you move forward to finance it? What is your operations model? And the more detail that you can provide, the more the document not only becomes a useful tool to prove to people that you want money, but it's useful to you as the roadmap for how do I move forward, right? Because we all get into a position where we're just going and going and going. We know what we're doing. And then we have to pivot or we have to change something. This business plan should be able to bring you back and help you as you are moving forward, okay? And when you think about sitting down and actually writing a business plan, nothing is scarier to any writer than a blank page, right? Oh my God, where do I start? What do I put down? So hopefully the things that we'll go over tonight, and specifically the 9 steps, will be able to show you where you can pull what you have that already exists or what you need to create to move forward. Okay. Now, a solid plan has a strong executive summary, right? People are only going to read the executive summary to start, and that's where they're going to decide if they move on and read the whole package that you've put in, or if they're going to pass on the opportunity. Okay. It has your idea feasibility in it. Why are you doing this? Where do you see the niche in the market, right? What are your market insights? How competitive is the landscape, right? Are you peddling ice in Alaska, or are you trying to peddle ice in Hawaii? Okay. 2 very different markets for selling your ice. Financial projections. We're going to touch on that throughout the night on a very high level in this class. And then there is an entire class on budgeting and financial projections. I would strongly encourage anyone who's not overly comfortable with delving into finances and QuickBooks and profit and loss statements and those kind of things, find someone to help you, okay? Because those can really become key. You want to be able to talk about your management team. Is it just you doing everything? Do you have other people working with you? And all of those provide the key elements that, you know, your venture capital, your investors, your banks are looking at, right? Is this just, I would like to paint and I think you should give me money so that I can paint and sell my art? Or do you have a plan that says, I know people want my art. It's very popular. I sell a lot of it. This is my market demographics. This is where I have found people who are willing to put my art out for sale. And this is how I can grow. Okay. Now, when we talk about business plans, we're going to focus on kind of businesses looking to either start up or grow. But sometimes you have an existing business that has gotten stale. So you may want to do a refocusing business plan. Businesses may do internal business plans. This is an exercise that as a company, a small company, you may do for yourselves just to think about how you want to move forward. Some companies do them on an annual basis, especially the goals part of the exercise. They can also be done for strategy, feasibility, operations, scenario based. You may want to expand your company into a different area. So you might run out a scenario based business plan to see, all right, I've been doing art, but I really want to get into media productions. And so how does that work with my company, and how do I pivot to do that? And what's the financial gain that I get from doing that? So that would be a scenario based kind of, you've already got an existing business, but you're going into a different area. All right, do we have any questions on what we've covered so far before we get into the two different types? All right, I don't see any hands.
Hey, Miss Mary.
Yep.
So I had put a question in the chat. Will we be receiving, because it's hard to take notes.
Yep.
So
No, I understand we're recording this and that's gonna be
Oh,
turned over to FRACC. I'm not sure
perfect.
what they're doing with it. But
Mhm.
we weren't planning on distributing the slides. I'm waiting to see what FRACC wants to do with this material.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
all right, so most of what we talk about will focus on the traditional type of business plan, understanding that the lean startup is just a simplified version of it. So it's a lot of the same material, just with less detail. These use a pretty standard structure, 9 to 10 different sections, depending on kind of which way you're looking at doing this. Looking for a lot of detail, right? This isn't something you're going to write in an hour. This is something that could take you a couple of weeks to even fully flush out and pull together. And then when you compound on the fact that most of you probably have other jobs and are trying to do other things, you may find that this takes you even longer and that you have to dedicate time every day to working on it. Lean startups use a standard structure as well, but they're only summarizing the important points because you're not going to have a lot of the financial background. It's going to be a lot more of the assumptions. So you can create it a little bit quicker and keep it to a page, but you're also only going to get startup type money. You would never go in looking for a $500,000 investment on a lean startup business plan, because it's not going to give a funder enough funding for that kind of commitment. So the lean business plan is the shorter version. It's the same format, but instead of the amount of detail that I'm going to get into for each area, you just hit on the key points. So it's slightly longer than the executive summary we're going to talk about. A little more detail than executive summary, but not as much detail as the full plan. Some businesses take their business plan and create a lean business plan as a secondary document to use to onboard new hires, to make sure that people that they're hiring get their vision and understand the company. Or they may use them for specific markets. So we're company does widgets, but we're going to make a very small run of screwdrivers, and we have a lean business plan just to do that part of it. Okay. And we will spend a little bit of time at the end of this going through the steps that would be involved in that, in case it does make sense for some of you to do that model as well. Nonprofits can sometimes do business plans, but these are traditionally focused on information that a donor is looking for. So there's more focus on public or social benefit and less focus. So your marketing plan takes on a slightly different aspect if you're doing a nonprofit, because we're not looking for you to show how you're going to make money. We're not looking for you to show how you're going to pay back this loan, or because it would be in the form of a grant. But they are looking for the impact. Okay, how are you going to show us how many people you've touched? A nonprofit business plan is very similar to most extensive grant applications. You're going to be looking at a lot of the same information. Okay. So 5 tips for creating your small business plan. So this is the things you want to start with. Okay. Know your audience. Are you bringing this to local investors? Are you bringing this to local banks who may know you and where it's not as formal? Or are you bringing this to Bank of America or, Bain Capital, where they're investors who are very professional looking for a fully polished product? Okay. You want to think through all of your relevant information for that audience and make sure that you provide it. And then knowing your audience also means sometimes you write a lot of stuff and you pull it out because it doesn't need to be in this document. It doesn't mean you won't need it somewhere else, but when you're looking at your business plan and what you do, you may end up pulling out some sections. The goal, you have to have a clear goal. It has to be something that you can state and that you can show how you're working towards. And the part of the goal of the business plan is to secure your funding, right? So if you are using this business plan to secure funding, you absolutely need to make sure that you are finishing all of the financial sections that they require, and that you are really being thoughtful about what they need to know about your financial projections. So I need, $250,000 to expand the facility where I can reproduce my pictures. Okay. If the goal is to expand your business, but not so much to ask for money, but to make sure your team is on board with the expansions you want to do, then you would focus less on the financial pieces of the plan and the goal, and focus more on what are we trying to achieve? Are we trying to achieve a larger part of the market? Are we trying to be the go-to place for art? Are we trying to be the company that provides all of the dancers? Right? What is it that you want to achieve? Invest time in research. You are not wasting your time if you are doing some digging as to how many other companies do this. Who are my market? Who am I selling to? Do people want to buy my product, right? And who else is selling similar products or services? One thing I like to do, when I'm meeting with clients to do this, is say, Google that you're looking to buy whatever the product is that you sell, and see what else is out there. How many hits am I getting? How many of them are local? What kind of market do I have out there? It's also a great way to figure out where, if your price point makes sense, where you're seeing other people's price points. So that upfront research time will make your life easier when you then try to sit down and write the plan itself. Okay. I know this may not seem short to people, but it should be short and readable and no longer than 15 to 20 pages. Okay. Now, for those of you who all just had a deep breath go in and go, oh my God, I haven't written 15 pages since the last time I was in school. Okay. It's going to be okay. There's a lot of things that you have to put in there that will actually make it fairly easy to get to 15 pages. Okay. When you think about, there's 9 things that we want you to cover. And then, you've got to do addendums and org charts and resumes and everything. And then additional documentation that you may find very valuable could be an appendix. Okay. So if you want to show a picture of the facility that you're going to be purchasing to do your expanded art replication, or the dance studio where you're gonna train people to dance. Put those pictures can be in the appendices. Okay. Now, for those of you who are gonna be so small that your company, you're the only person in it, keeping it in a single voice is easy. For those people who may have multiple people involved in this process and helping you, make sure that you keep the voice consistent. We all have our own little nuances to our writing, okay? And you can tell, and I do a lot of work in the grant world, I do a lot of reviewing of grants. You can tell when multiple people have thrown in different things into a grant application, because all of a sudden you'll be reading along and go, holy cow, it's like this person just ate a thesaurus for this 4 paragraphs. No, there's just a different writing style where somebody uses a different style of vocabulary, but you do notice it, okay? And then take some time for editing before you distribute. Have somebody read it who knows nothing about it and see what kind of aha moments they come back to you with. Okay. Now, there are 9 steps that you should follow to get a successful business plan put together. We'll go through each one of these. This is what makes up that 15 to 20 page document. Actually, 8 of them make up the 15 to 20 page document, and one of them is reminding you everything else goes at the end. Now, the first thing that will be in your business plan is your executive summary. But as you see that I have at the bottom, sometimes this is easier to write last, okay? Because you're going to be able to pull highlights. It's kind of like when you wrote your paper in school and then you went back and wrote the abstract when you were done. It's like, now that I know what I actually put in the paper, I can pull out what the paper is going to be about. Okay. But you want to think of this as your elevator pitch, right? This is they're only going to read 1 page. I want to sell them on my company in this 1 page and want them to read the rest of it because they're going to want more detail. Oh, that's a really great idea. Oh, that's super creative. How are they going to do that? And so kind of like a really good trailer to a movie that sucks you in and you go, oh, now I really want to go see that movie. This is your trailer. Okay. It should include your mission statement, a brief description of the products or services, talking about your company and the leadership. If you have employees, where you are, and where you are in the context of, are you the only art studio in a 20-mile radius? Are you part of a thriving art community where all of you help each other? Are you somewhere in between? Okay. And then you're painting a broad summary of your financial growth plans. Somewhere in here should highlight what your ask is, but you're not going to focus on that. You've got plenty of pages later to talk about that. Given that the executive summary is the most crucial thing, because if they don't get past reading the executive summary, then they're not going to read the rest of the business plan. This is where you want to ask for help. If somebody says, I can only give you 5 minutes, have them review your executive summary. What do you think? What can I tighten up? Okay. Make sure that you distill everything that follows. If you know of somebody who is in the investing field or a lender, see if you can get them to read it for you and give you your feedback. Even if you're not their maybe typical client, they can give you some really good insight. And one of the reasons that we say sometimes it's easier to write it last is because you can really highlight out the key points that you've identified in your plan. Because the whole exercise of writing the plan forces you to think about, what do I want to do? And sometimes in the process of writing the plan, great ideas come out. Like, now that I'm flushing this all out, I can actually do it this way, and it'll make so much more sense. Okay. It should include your business concepts, right? So what does your business do? What is it that this business is? What are your goals and visions? So what do you want to do? A description of your product and differentiation. Okay, so why should I support your business instead of business Z that already exists? And who is that target market? Okay. You want to touch on your marketing strategies enough so that all of these are enough so that they know you've thought them out and you tease them to keep reading and you'll get more detail. Okay. Current financial state. Where are you currently? Okay. Are you making money? Are you not making money? What's going on? And where does your revenue, what do you foresee that you're going to make? Then the ask, and then who's involved with the business. Okay. So that's your executive summary. That'll be 1 page at the front. It kind of hits all the highlights. So let's put that aside. And we're actually going to start with the nitty gritty now, which is the second section of your business plan where you're describing your company. Okay. First thing you start with is your business's registered name and address. So some of you may be doing DBAs, doing business as, or you're a corporation. I used to run grants for the Whaling Museum, and one of my favorite things was when, of course, we're applying for grants, we have to apply for grants under our name of the Old Dartmouth Historical Society, not the New Bedford Whaling Museum, because that's our legal name. Right? So whatever name you have registered the company with, even if you're doing it as a DBA, make sure that's the name you're using and your business address. And then who's working with you, okay? And why are they part of your team, right? So I'm gonna pick on Kareem and his dance company a little bit because I kind of can wrap my head around that a little bit easier. For those instructors that you're bringing in that are gonna really help you succeed, right? Because it's not, you can't possibly teach every class. You've got to have some other people there to help you. What is your technical expertise, right? This is not just, I like to dance, so I thought I'd start a dance company. This is, you've trained, you've worked in the field, you have street creds, and you want to talk about that. Okay. You want to talk about your structure. Are you a sole proprietorship? Are you a general or limited partnership? Are you a corporation? You can be a C Corp or an S Corp. Are you a limited liability company? Okay. If all of these terms are completely foreign to you, one of the things you may want to look at is getting an attorney to help you set up your business, and maybe an accountant to help you figure out what kind of business model makes the most sense for you. Okay. I will also throw in a plug, since there were a lot of women on this call. It does not hurt to become a DBE in this state when you're setting up your business, which is a disadvantaged business enterprise, because there are certain state and federal doors that get open to you if you're a certified private company that is a DBE. Okay. Now, if it's a sole proprietorship, it's easy. You own 100% of the company. Anything else, make sure it's clear who owns what in the company and what is their involvement. Are they silent? Do you have silent partners who are funding partners? Are you actively 50-50, or 4 of you and each of you owns 25% of the company and you all work equally? Did somebody put the money in and somebody else is, so one's the brains and one's the funder? You know, any one of those models is fine. Just make sure that it's clear on paper. And sometimes this exercise is good for you as a business owner, just to make sure that you all understand what it is, right? You thought you were 50-50 partnership, and then you come to find out that your other 50% partner was thinking more, no, I'm thinking more like 60-40. So not only does it help you to get it down on paper, but it's a good conversation for partners to be having as you're putting this together, making sure that you stay on the same page. Now, in this section, we also get into organization and management. If you're big enough to actually have an organizational chart, that's great. Roles, responsibilities, relationships, who reports to who, who's in charge of what. If you have people on your team, what unique experiences do they bring, right? If you hire a marketing guru to work with you because you are an incredibly talented artist and you can paint really well, but you have no idea how to market, so you brought in this person to help you, talk about their experience as part of this, because that gives a level of comfort that that part of the plan is going to be well handled because you've brought in somebody who's an expert. Resumes or curriculum vitalis of your key members, right? Again, going back to the detailed legal structure, and communicating what kind of corporation it is and how each person will contribute. And then we get into the nitty-gritty kind of, all right, so why are you doing this? Why are you in business? Why are you different? What makes you the unique business that you are? Okay, so what have you got going for you? Right? What is your pizzazz? What is it that is going to make you be a successful business because of what you have? Which all sets up to answer the question, why you're a good investment. Why am I going to write you a check as an investor, or why am I going to loan you money, okay, as a bank? There has to be something in there that makes them feel good about doing that. This is also where you can talk about some of the things that are a little more of the soft skill area, right? What are your principles? What are your ideas? What are your philosophies? Okay. Going back to the dancing school, maybe you firmly believe that every child should get a chance at the lead because it builds up, I don't know, gives them confidence. So part of your philosophy is that everybody can come out and everybody can dance and everybody can be the lead. And that's a really important part of your business model and how you want your company to be known as, okay? That's an incredibly important thing to be able to articulate and put into your business section, okay? You want to get into the history. How did you get here, right? You know, we all know the story of Steve Jobs. He started in the garage building computers, and the next thing you know, we've all got an Apple on our desk. How do you get there? How has it evolved over time? This how has it evolved over time is setting you up for a section later where we talk about goals. Okay. It is very important that you understand where you're going and what those goals are. And then we're going to talk about those experts on the team, that perfect location, right? I have the opportunity to get a storefront in the middle of downtown New Bedford in the historic district. Okay. Excellent location. It's just the right size for my art store. There's other art stores, so we're going to get art people to show up. The city of New Bedford's committed to being an art community. So all of those things. Don't assume that they know anything about any of the communities, right? Make sure you put the details in there. So Fall River has a very active arts and cultural council. New Bedford has a very strong arts connection through the Creative Catalyst, right? So setting up the community as a support will also help. Because then we also want to get into brand value and goals. And this is why I said it's really not that hard to actually get to 15 pages. You will find that you need to keep it to 15 pages because there's a lot of stuff that we're looking for, right? Now, brand value, right? All of those people that you're accountable, right? My brand, it's my name, right? We think about this when we think about, you know, big superstars. I grew up with Larry Bird playing basketball. He was a brand, right? He was the guy. You want to think about how you want your company perceived. Okay, so how are the owners perceiving you, the employees, the suppliers, and how do you want to interact with them or conduct business with them? Okay, and these core values should start to emerge. We all want to be good business people, but going back to my dance example, right? Giving every student the chance to star in a number is a value, right? That you want to build on. I believe that every student can succeed if we set them up for success, right? And then we have goals, right? And you always want to have short and long-term goals. So short-term goals achievable within the next year, long-term goals 1 to 5 years. I believe you should always have at least one 5-year goal because it keeps you moving towards something, okay? We talk about SMART, right? So goals should be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. I have now become a big fan of SMARTie goals, SMARTIE, because I think they should not only be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound, but they also need to be inclusive and equitable. Okay, and when we start incorporating inclusivity and equitability in our goals as a business, we are starting to drive the conversation to move towards equitable and inclusive for everyone. So there's my pitch on where I'm trying to get SMART to become SMART. Now, vision and mission statement. Your mission statement is your one sentence, right? Why does your business exist? Okay, and you want it to be convincing. Your vision is we will, right? We will do whatever the business is. What is the achieving of what you have in your head? Okay, keep it to 3 sentences. Sometimes people get a little verbose on these. It goes back to the whole KISS, right? Keep it simple, stupid. You want to keep it simple. And the best vision statements are those that are concise. All right, so we've gotten through 1 and 2. Does anybody have any questions at this point? And I will say with this many of you, I am having a hard time with the chat. So make sure you also shout out if you've put something in the chat. I don't think I see anything at this point. Okay. So the third section is where we talk about the goals of the business, okay? Focusing on what you want to accomplish in the near term and long term. And really, when we're talking about selling this to the outside, right? So you're writing this business goal to bring to a bank. They need to understand why you have the need for the funding, how this funding will help you grow, and how you plan to achieve those targets that you've set, okay? If they can see your vision and they can understand your goals, they are going to feel better about investing, okay? Goals are never something you write and then forget about, okay? They are a living, breathing document that you should return and reassess as your business grows, as you as a person grow and change, and as you achieve your goals, right? This isn't something where you go, all right, I had 5 goals, I got all 5 of them done, I'm good. I can just coast now. Now you have to set your new goals. Okay, so this is a constant moving target. So number-based goals are obviously always easier to achieve, right? I'm gonna sell 25 paintings. I'm gonna have 400 students run through the program this year. I'm going to get my art into 17 new areas, right? Those are number-based goals. You may have brand awareness, right? I want 47,000 new followers on my Instagram account by the end of the year. Okay, so it's not so much that the business is going to do something, but that the brand awareness around your business is going to grow. Now, for the person who mentioned like YouTube and those channels, you might be looking at subscribers. That would be part of your profit goal, but your brand awareness would be more tied to your non-profit brand awareness that you're doing. And you should also set revenue targets for growth, right? I want to see $200,000 worth of revenue come in the next year. Okay. And when we get into the finance, we'll talk about how this different, but revenue is what you expect to actually earn. It's without taking into account expenses. So you could still lose money, but have positive revenue targets. Okay. But they're good to have. Then we have those intangible goals, right? Goals that aren't traceable to a number. Okay. When it's, we want to achieve top status on a Google search, right? Without paying for it, which is, I don't want to spend any money, but I want to somehow have enough positive reviews and be seen as positive to get that. We want to have an impact on the neighborhood that we're located in. Okay. Very hard to measure what impact, positive impact on a neighborhood means, but it gives you something that is positive that you can work towards, that you may never quite achieve. It may be something unlike the number base that you just continue to work towards. All right. Now we get into what you do. Okay, so believe it or not, we've got 3 sections done and we still haven't talked about what you actually do. Okay, because they want to kind of know that you're a real business first, or that you have a real thought of how you're going to be a business. So now what are you going to do, right? What are you going to make, or what are you going to offer for services? Very much this is where you get into the granular detail of what your product is or how your service works, what your pricing models are, right? I can charge $75 for a 5x7 reproduction of a print. I can charge $150 for an 8x10 reproduction of a print. Okay. So we know, you know, that that's the pricing model that we've used to plug in. They'll show up in our financials later. They want to know that you've thought of those things. They want to know who your typical customer is, who's buying your product, or who is taking advantage of the services that you offer. Okay. Supply chain and order fulfillment. So for arts, this may not be as big of a issue, depending on, I don't know if there's a shortage of canvas and paints, but like right now, if you told, I have a friend who is moving a bus manufacturing company to the United States and has supply chain issues. Okay, they want to move their company here. They're working on their business plan for the US, but they have huge supply chain issues that they need to address in their business plan. Okay. So make sure you talk about this, and if it's not an issue, that's great, but make sure you also say that, right? It's very easy for us here to get art supplies. So putting a number on our goods can be challenging. So, Temple, what I would say is this is where your research comes in, right? This is where a little bit as you know your worth, right? You know what you should be getting for this art, but also look around, go to the art, go to stores that have similar goods or services, right? And see what they're charging and see what the market can bear. Okay. You also need to figure out what it costs you to make your goods, right? If you're selling knitted hats, you have to buy the yarn and you have to buy the needles or have the needles, but you also need your time to do that, right? If you're not mass producing them and you're actually knitting them, how long does it take you and what is your value? I wouldn't say that there's a professional that can help you put that money value on. I think it's the research and know your own worth and don't underestimate your worth. Okay, I think that's a big issue that we fall into, especially where we are in this, we're not Boston, right? So you think to yourself, nobody's going to pay $75 for my art. Yes, they will. Okay, because if that's what it's worth and that's what the value is, then don't short yourself on it. Okay. It shouldn't matter where we live and what we are doing, but unfortunately, especially I think with some of the arts, it does a little bit. So don't underestimate your own worth. Does that help, Temple? Okay. So you want to talk about your sales strategy. How do you plan on getting your products out there? And also order fulfillment. How do you plan on getting your orders out there? Are you going to have a storefront where they just take it? Is it a online service where they order it and you drop ship, or they have to pay for shipping? Talk about that when you talk about your distribution strategy. If you have something that is trademarked or patented, make sure you discuss that, both the status of it, whether it's current or pending, and be clear that whatever you have either is trademarked or patented or will be trademarked and patented. Okay. Apparently you can use Taco Tuesday now. I saw that on the news the other day. Whatever patent was on it is off, so we can all have Taco Tuesday now. This is where you almost can't be too specific, okay? So when you talk about a product lifestyle, art should last for a long time, right? But maybe that knitted hat isn't going to last quite as long. Right? I'm not going to have it for 100 years, but a really good painting in a nice frame may last 100 years. What is the benefit to the customers, right? They're making art as an investment. Okay. They have to understand that the benefit is that they're investing in something that will last longer than they do. Okay. If you have plans for intellectual property, copyright, patent filings, make sure you discuss that. If there's any research or development, and I don't know if maybe with some of the media stuff, especially all the new media outlets and streaming and everything, there may be some research and development that you have to do. Make sure you talk about that. And then, is there a current market, or is this a necessity, or is this entirely new, right? I would always think of this question when people would come to me selling Pampered Chef, right? I can only buy so many pots and pans. But then when they started getting to spices, I'm like, hey, now this is becoming either necessary or entirely new, right? Because I can buy spices more than once, but I'm still only going to buy a frying pan probably once and maybe twice in a 10-year period, right? So think of your product that way. Is the current market supporting this? Is it necessary? Is it entirely new, right? And to Temple's point in pricing strategy and explaining materials, right? So going back to if you're knitting hats and you're using Angora wool and it's expensive, that's the material cost, right? And then you know that there's an upcharge, right? Because you need to make a profit on the material itself. And then you need to make a profit on your time that it takes you to make that, okay? And so you have deemed that you can make a hat every 3 hours. I have no idea how long it takes to knit something, so I may be completely wrong. But you can do it in 3 hours. You figure your time is worth $75 an hour. You know, obviously that's a little unrealistic for hat, but what is the price that people are getting? I know you can buy some very expensive wool hats online right now. And then if you're selling multiple items, make sure you talk about each one of them. Maybe you don't get into the same level of detail for every single item if you're selling 10 items, but make sure they know you have 10 items that you're selling and here's some general information about each one of them, right? Going back to the dance class, you're going to offer 7 different types of dance classes, right? And they'll be from beginner to advanced. And so you don't have to get into the minutia on every single class, but enough to know that you've thought about how each one of those classes would look. So if it's only a few items, get as much information as you can. If you know that you have an established product base and you're about to come out with a new product line that's going to help your growth and your finances, talk about that, right? On top of this loan to expand the business, within a year, we plan on adding adult dance lessons. We're not just going to teach kids, but 2 nights a week, we're going to open up 2 mornings a week, we're going to open up the studio to a senior citizen dance class and get them engaged. Okay. We're using our facility. We're getting more use out of our facility because the kids wouldn't be there during the day. So this allows us to expand the use and reduce the cost of the building on any one class. So that's how you're going to improve your profitability, right? I'm now, instead of only teaching from 5 to 7, now we're teaching 3 mornings a week. So it's not costing me as much to keep the building running. Where are the products coming from? Remember, handmade crafts are sourced differently than trending products for drop shipping. So if you're going to be involved with a drop shipping business, make sure you look at how they're setting this up, like an Etsy or one of those. This is a great place, especially for you artists, right? Any kind of picture that demonstrates your work, right? This is the beauty of the art side versus the widget maker. Widgets aren't very exciting to look at, right? They might be the greatest widgets in the world. You might need them. You know, I have a friend who makes the little tiny chip that makes the clocks work in a thermal reactor. It's very important, not very interesting to look at. One picture is more than you need, right? On the other hand, I'm looking over Elaine's head and there's a beautiful piece of art above her head. And if that were something that she was selling, I would want to see pictures like that in the proposal to get me excited about what it is that you're selling. Okay, and that's really the advantage that the arts have over some other traditional businesses, right? If you're opening up an accounting firm, you're not going to have very many pretty pictures of your services, right? But on the art side, we have this beautiful array of things that we can put into the proposals. Now, you do want to talk about logistics and operations, okay? These are probably not very sexy things for any of you. They just kind of happen. But you want to make sure you think about them, right? So where do you get your supplies from? Or where are your products produced if you're not producing them yourselves? So for you guys, it would probably mostly be product you're producing. Will you make, manufacture, wholesale, or drop ship products, right? Are you bringing items in from China and reselling them here? Or are you manufacturing them? Are you making each individual product? Did you just buy a knitting machine that can make 10 hats an hour instead of you making one? And how long does it take you to produce and get them shipped, right? How do you handle the busy season? Christmas is coming, right? In shorter amount of time than I care to admit, since it's now November 1st. Most of the stores have geared up for Christmas already, right? We're all gonna go shopping and buy things. How are you ready for that? We spend all summer bulking up on items that we can put out for the Christmas sale season, right? Or an unexpected spike in demand, right? Who thought we would go into a pandemic and all of a sudden you wouldn't be able to buy a Peloton bike because now that everybody's home, they all went out and bought Peloton bikes, you know? Like, you can't predict some things, but how would you deal with a spike in the demand? And then the facility, where will you guys be working, okay? Is it that you have a retail space? Are you working at home and selling your product on Etsy or at a cooperative store in downtown? Or where is that facility where both the work is happening and where the retail is happening? Okay. Do you need equipment? And when we talk about equipment, it's everything. You need a computer because you're going to have to do financial reporting. You need light bulbs, right? It's everything that you don't necessarily think of that you want to account for, because those all have a cost, right? If you have to go to Home Depot and buy a package of light bulbs, it's going to cost you $12, right? Those add up if you have to go once a month, because you end up having the lights on because you work all kinds of crazy hours, right? Are you handling shipping and fulfillment in-house or using a third party? How much inventory will you keep on hand? Okay, this is the big question now, right? Is if you are, say, producing prints, do you want to have 75 prints at any given time in, or do you only want to keep 20 on hand because you know you will only go through about 10 a week and then continue to have them shipped as you need them? Do you have the space to store them if 75 show up? Okay. And how are you managing the inventory, right? How are you tracking what you have? Okay. And so remember, these business plans are made to cover everything from widgets to dance classes. So what you spend your time putting details into may be different than the widget company or the accountant, but the same basic questions get asked. It's just how much detail has to go into each one of these sections. So even if you sit there and go, that doesn't really make sense to me, then the answer is we are making inventory upon demand, so we don't have to keep inventory on hand. Okay, but you've acknowledged that you understand that you had to think about it, and that's your answer. Okay. All right, market research. So I'm going to go through marketing fairly quickly. For those of you who signed up for the whole session, they are bringing in somebody to teach the marketing section. Marketing is not my specialty. There's people who are way better at it. That's why I had them get somebody else to teach that class. But for the purposes of your business plan, you do want to demonstrate that you have done market research. Okay. So what sets your product apart from your competition? Acknowledge that your competition may do things well, right? But you can do things better. Okay, so it's not they suck and we're great, right? And that may be the case, but we'll try not to use any of those words. We will stick with things like they're a well-established company that's been doing this for a long time. I'm bringing a fresh perspective to this business or this art or this whatever. Okay. by saying that, you know, there's almost no chance you can say you have no competition, or that they really are not good, right? You want to acknowledge there are things they do well, or they probably wouldn't still be in business. Or they're in business because they're the only business in town, right? How many of us would like to not use Comcast? But it's the only option you have if you live in New Bedford or Dartmouth. I don't get a choice, okay? If you're serving a different or underserved market, you should explain that, if that's helpful for people to know. You need to understand your industry and target markets. And this is where, if you have expertise or there's something about your skill set, and I'll go back to the dancing, right? Kareem gave a pretty good overview snapshot of his skills. He would want to expand on those to say, in doing his market research, he is familiar with these or is aware of them and knows what they have and has been able to look at it with a critical eye and has a different approach, okay? So show what you're offering is vital and fills an important market role. Because if they don't think that you're marketable, they're not going to want to fund you. Okay? That's really the bottom line here. So competitive research shows what other businesses are doing, what are their strengths. It'll identify trends. It will tell you what the competitors do and why that works for them. And then you can frame that in, this works for them, but we could do a better job on this. Okay. So it's worth spending the time again to do research. We talked about research at the beginning. This is really marketing focused, but spending that time doing the research helps. And they're always going to ask for some sort of market analysis, right? Because the marketing makes or breaks a business. I can't tell you the number of people who tried to open restaurants right before 9/11. I'm not 9/11, COVID, right? You did not want to open a restaurant in March of 2020 because the whole world shut down a week after your restaurant opened. There's nothing you can do about that, right? That's beyond your control. But the market can make or break the business. What you can control is the right market for your product. One who has plenty of customers, right? Niche markets are very difficult. If there's only 10 people who want to buy what you're selling, you really need to find how to get all 10 of them to buy it. So you want to make sure you've got plenty of customers and they need your product. This market analysis is almost more important for you than for the funder. The funder is looking at it to see that you've done it. It's kind of like one of those check the boxes, you've done it. But for you, it's critical because it's really forcing you to look at, why are you doing this, okay? What is the reality for me to make this business succeed? Okay. We would all like to have a successful business. Unfortunately, it is a very competitive market out there. And you want to dig into the data, right? Use relevant independent data to validate potential markets, okay? Because if you choose the wrong market or the right market at the wrong time, you will find yourself struggling for each sale, okay? You are probably not going to do well selling $20,000 pieces of artwork in New Bedford. You know, it's not, we don't get enough people coming through who can pay that level of money for a piece of art. I have seen art for sale like that on Nantucket. Okay. Now, Nantucket gets a different clientele of people going through, right? So if that's the art that you want to sell, maybe you need to look at getting into a gallery in Nantucket to sell it, okay? So knowing this all comes down to your market analysis, doing the research. I cannot stress enough how important having that research is, right? I know it's tedious, believe me, I know it's tedious, but it does pay off when you can answer all these questions and understand why you're doing something. Especially how big your potential market is. Okay, so who is your customer? Okay, and there's a lot of data. As the census data comes out, there's the regional planning agencies have data. The cities have data. Look at who lives in your area, what's the median income, what social channels they use, kind of what shopping works, right? Research industry trends and trajectories, right? Maybe watercolor is making a resurgence and you should get into doing watercolors because all of a sudden that is the big trend that everybody wants to have in their house. Okay. Google Trends will help you with that. If you have a trade publication, I don't know enough about the trade side of the arts to know if there's a publication that you can go to that would help you with this. But Google is a wonderful, wonderful tool, even to just put in art trade publications, right? See what comes up. You're never going to be perfect, right? You're never going to have all of the information you want. But if you do the research, you can make the informed guesses and have usable market data. The goal is to base your estimates on as many verifiable data points as necessary. Okay. You don't want to just say, yeah, I probably can sell to 20 people a year. I could probably sell to 30 people a year. Okay. You want to, where did that number come from? That's just what I feel like. Okay. That's not a relevant number, and it's not going to give someone who's about to write you a check to allow you to do this confidence. Now, a SWOT analysis is something that all businesses use at various times for different reasons, okay? But in your business plan, it helps you focus on your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And threats are not necessarily like a gun to your head threats. Threats are things that you may not be able, that are going to threaten your ability to succeed, okay? But SWOT sounds good, so we use threats. So what are the best things about your company? What are you maybe not so good at? Sometimes that internal reflection is very difficult, okay? And this can be the company, this could also be you as the manager to say, as the owner to say, okay, I am great at the creative stuff. I'm great at the artwork. I'm not so good at the bills and paperwork. I really need to invest in the bookkeeper because I say I'm going to do it and I don't get to it. So maybe it's worth $300 a month to have a part-time bookkeeper come in and help me with that part of my business because that's my weakness. Okay. So what, and then opportunities, what markets or industry shifts can you take advantage of? And what can you turn into opportunities? Okay. Are there external factors threatening your ability to succeed? Okay. Is there a saturation of the market of artists in the South Coast? I don't know. There's a lot of different kinds of artists. So what is our saturation point? But take a look at what you need to succeed. And these are usually done in some sort of visual, and there's a whole bunch of, this is something you can Google. You can dive into how deep you want to get into a SWOT analysis. But what it quickly does is force you to see the factors that impact your business and helps you determine your competitive advantages in the market, right? And it's a tool you can use. I use SWOT analysis for a whole variety of things. Sometimes even with my daughter when she annoys me, we'll do a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that I don't kill you today. So it's a good tool to keep in your toolbox. Now, you also want to do some competitive analysis, okay? So 3 factors that differentiate your business from the competition, okay? Can you be a cost leader, right? Can you maximize profits by offering lower prices than your competitors? That might be hard with more of these personalized items that you make, but it may be able to come into play if it's something that you can reproduce. Differentiation, okay? Are your products or services distinct from the cost leaders in the industry? And can you stand out for that uniqueness, right? We all have that thing that we bought because nobody else had it, right? I will be the first to admit that in the 80s, I had coveralls that came from Benetton because they came out on the West Coast first and I got them. Okay, I was like, cool. They were unique. Nobody else had them on the East Coast yet. It's that uniqueness, right? It was that being the leader that was made it different. Okay, what do you have? Are you able to use product that's only found in Ireland and you're the only one who can bring it into the country, and that makes your product unique because it either paints differently or it's a different kind of wool, something that differentiates you from what else is out there. Okay. And if you are doing segmentation, if you're in a niche market, a target market, is it easier with your company to start with a smaller audience before you move on, right? Maybe you need to get so many subscribers to your YouTube channel before they give you market share. I don't fully understand how the money side of that works, but sometimes it is better to be smaller before you move on. Okay, you understanding that as the expert in your field is what's important. And then you look at that competitive landscape. Okay. Even when you're being innovative, the market's competitive, right? And so that competitive overview in the business plan shows that you recognize that. Okay. The biggest pitfall you can make with this is ignoring it. If I ignore it, it will impact me. No, that shows that you didn't acknowledge it, and it will give funders a concern that you're not coming into this with a realistic view. Okay. So who are your direct competitors, right? If you're in an established market, who are your direct competitors? And again, spend the time to explain why you're different. If you can't identify your direct competitors, what would be the substitute, right? So you know, all art is unique, right? That's what makes it unique, whether it's paintings or creative, you know, putting together. I bought a pair of earrings that were made from plastic that was pulled up from the beach and compressed into different shapes. Okay. Even the two earrings are unique, but she can identify companies, people who make earrings, right? That's just because she's got a unique little niche that she's making it from trash she picked up off the beach. It's still an earring. So even though she might be the only one making, you know, clean up the beach trash earrings, people are making earrings. So you're competing against somebody who's making earrings, right? I do love those earrings. All right, so you outline your marketing and sales plan. How are you going to get your customers to buy? How are you going to develop customer loyalty, right? If this is something that could be a repeat business, or in your case, a recommendation business, okay? Because people may not buy multiple pieces of art. They may, but more likely they'll really love the piece of art and tell their friends about it. What are your money moves? Like, how are you controlling your cash in spending money on marketing, but not wasting money on marketing, right? There is such a thing as bad publicity, you know, not all publicity is good. Get access into insights and recommendations. There's no single approach, right? Your marketing plan, like your goals, should continue to evolve. Okay. If you had said 10 years ago that everybody was gonna be paying for advertising on Facebook, I would have said, you're out of your mind. I'm not gonna pay for something that I go on to socially scroll through and see what my family is doing. But it is a marketing segment now, right? So you need to constantly look at what's out there and evolve and change. And then also, how will the sale actually happen? If you've got a storefront, it's easy. They'll come into the store and they'll buy it. If they have to find you on a web or you have to ship them something, how will the sale happen? Make sure you've thought that through. You cannot possibly describe your marketing and sales strategy thoroughly enough, okay? Any detail, all detail is good, because this also ties into the financial projections we're about to talk about, okay? Now, you need to plan for 4 key areas, okay? Price. How much does your product cost and why have you made that decision? So Temple, all the stuff that we talked about, this is where you lay out your, how did you reach the conclusion that this is the price? Okay. What are you selling and how do you differentiate it? How will you get the product in front of your customers? And where will you sell the product? What channels are you using to sell the product? Okay. You're going to notice some of these themes weave in and out, right? We've talked about these themes in a couple of different areas because they all tie together, okay? And you need all of these areas for the whole thing to work. Now, customer segmentation, right? What is your ideal customer? What general or specific demographics are you looking at, right? So where do they live, their age range, education, common behavior, how they spend their free time, kind of where do they work, what are technology, how much they earn, what they're commonly employed, and values, beliefs, opinions. Not all of you will use all of these customer segmentations. This is the more complete list. You need to pick and choose kind of based on what you need to know, right? And for different fields, there are going to be different customer segmentations that you need to understand, okay? Now, financial analysis. We're going to talk about this also in a little bit of the high level because there's a whole class on budgeting and finance, okay? In fact, some of these slides transfer over to that other budgeting and finance class, so you'll see the connection. Income or profit and loss statement, P&L, right? Every business should have a P&L. What do you make as a profit? What are you taking as a loss? Your balance sheet, which will list your assets and your debt. And then cash flow, okay? How does cash come in and how does cash go out, right? You always have more cash going out than you have coming in because you're constantly buying product or buying materials to make your product, okay? So you've got upfront costs that you've spent and then the money comes in as you're earning it, but how does that work? So if you are, yes, so I have my note at the bottom, this may not exist for a startup, then this all becomes about projections. So now you're projecting what you anticipate you will take in and you anticipate it will cost you, okay? You're going to look at net profit margins. So what are you keeping as your net income? What is your current ratio? It's the measurement of your liquidity and your ability to repay debt. Okay, so if I give you $250,000 somewhere in this financial plan, I want to see how you're going to make income because it's your company, but you're also going to have the ability to pay back that loan. Okay, so you need to make more money than you have so that you can keep some for yourself and pay back the loan. And then accounts receivable turnover ratio. If you bill out for your product, so services that maybe you're a tax accountant and you prepare somebody's taxes, you don't mail them their completed taxes till they pay you. Sometimes they don't pay you, right? So you're out that money. So how much money are you out that you haven't collected? It is easier if you are not giving them the item until they pay for it and you can actually sell it to somebody else if they don't pay for it, than it is for some service things. So if you are an existing business, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, they're generally looking for 3 years of history. But if you are a startup, you're going to be projecting these kind of numbers. They're still going to want to see them. They just understand their projections, not actual. So you want to outline your funding requirements, okay? Most times we're looking at a 5-year snapshot, okay? So over the next 5 years, how much is it going to cost you for your business to run? When do you expect to make a profit? When do you be able to expect to pay back debt? When do you need the money, right? If you may not need all $250,000 the first year, right? Say you need 6 months to make the product that you're going to sell. So for 6 months, you just need to cover your living expenses so that you can make the product, so that you have inventory when you open. And then at month 7, now you have other costs that are going to come in. So when does that pay off? Whether you want debt or equity, are you repaying this loan, or are they becoming a partner or have equity in your company? How long is the terms of this funding request, okay? They want to see a detailed description of how you'll use the funds. If it's as a side note, they understand you have to get paid, but most times they're looking for more than just paying you, okay? They are looking for, are you having staff on board? What are your material costs? What is your overhead? Okay. They don't just want to give you $250,000 and have you live off of that for 2 years with nothing to show for it. Okay. So they want to know what you're going to use it for, and a lot of times a timeline for how long you think. Okay. And then in that 5-year plan, there should be some indication of how you're going to pay off your debt, or how you're going to sell the business to start a new business, right? It makes so much money now, it's profitable, you'll sell it for a profit and go on to the next business. There are people who just start up companies, right? They just like starting companies. I was in Texas last week, and one of the areas had a guy who just starts companies, right? He likes to start them, likes to get them up and running, he likes to get them successful, and then he sells them. Because he likes the challenge of the startup more than the running of the company. Not my personal choice, but if you're good at it, God bless you. Now, financial projections are critical if you're seeking finance, right? This is somewhere you want to do your homework. You want to put the time and effort in. This is not a guessing on the back of an envelope type deal. Okay, you need to think long and hard about, what do you actually need? Okay. And show, how are you going to generate profit, right? If they give you $250,000 and you can produce reproductions of your top 10 prints, right, that you have painted, and you can sell them, how are you going to pay yourself, pay for the materials, and repay the loan? Or if they've chosen to invest, how are they going to get their investment back? Okay. Like I said, if you're an existing business, they're going to ask for, at a minimum, the last 3 years of of income statements, balance statements. They like some banks, especially more conservative banks, will ask for 5 years if you have them. They're gonna ask for 5 years if you're growing, right? That you're an established business and you're growing, because they want to see kind of how you've done. And so accuracy is key. You want to look at your past financial statements if you have them and see where your growth has come in. And if you don't, you want to spend the time to make sure your projections make sense. Okay, and this is where I get into not only don't underestimate your own costs, right? What is your worth as an artist? But also, what is a true cost for you, right? If you're making these at home, part of the cost of your home has to be considered as a business expense, because you're working at home and you're producing something at home. Okay, so don't forget that your light bill and maybe your electric bill, if you're using electricity to create your product, right? All of that comes into effect. It's okay to lose money the first year. Nobody's saying that you're going to come out of the gate and be profitable. That's why people invest, is to give you the chance to have some money. But they want to see that there is a point where you're going to break even, and then the point where you make money. Okay, so it's usually loss, break even, profit. Sometimes you get lucky, you profit right away. Sometimes you get lucky, you break even right away, right? But the general flow is that first year, because you're getting going, there's some sort of loss. Your financial goals should be aggressive, can be aggressive, but they have to be realistic. Okay. If any one of you turns around and says to me, I'm going to have $1 million in art sales next year, I would really like to see how you come up with that number. Because that, for an unknown company to have $1 million in revenue, would be, you should be on the front of business news, right? That would be quite an achievement. It's a great goal to have, that your company is eventually $1 million company, but be realistic about the first couple of years. So your funding request is going to have those projections in it. So even if you're an existing business, okay, you've got 3 to 5 years worth of financials that you've sent in, you're also going to send in maybe 2 to 3 years worth of projections, right? We just did the budget projections for my company for the next 3 years, because I had to turn them in this week. And we're projecting a 2.5% increase in both growth and revenue coming in. Okay, so we're thinking that that's a modest way to look at our long-term projections, right? And you always want to have future projection, right? Even as you're moving along as a company, and this is one of the things we'll talk about. We talk about budgeting, but you should always have fiscal projections. You should always have your next 2 years worth of your budget in a rough form. Right? They're going to change once you get closer to the date they start, but you should always have a sense of where your projections are. And you want to make sure that you convey stability when you're talking, right? Because stability shows financial success. If you have collateral, like you already have a building, you're an existing business that has a building already, that's collateral against a loan. It's much easier to get a loan if you have collateral than if you have an uncollateralized loan. Okay. And graphs and charts are excellent ways to tell a story, right? A nice pie chart of your revenue, or a nice bar graph of what your expected projection of revenue is. All of those tell a nice, colorful story. And, as artists, you guys probably know that there's more than 3 colors that you can use for those. So they'll also be pretty. For how soon do you do projections? If you should start with the startup year, right? So if you want to start your business, let's say in 2024, you should be doing projections for 2024. What do you expect this is going to cost you? What do you need to know to make this happen? Okay. Worst case is something happens and you get delayed and you don't end up using that, you have to push it out. But it kind of becomes, you just pick a month and start, right? And then go from there. So if you want to start and say your fiscal year like starts November 1st, and I'm going to start it starting today and project out. Okay, does that make sense? Now, you should have a budget. So on top of, you know, profit and loss and projected revenue and all that, you should have a budget, right? If you don't have a basic budget for your business, it is very hard to succeed, right? That is the cornerstone for everything. And then you should have it broken down into weekly, monthly, and annual spending, right? So like your insurance cost is an annual cost, but at least monthly, if not weekly, you'd like to get paid and your employees would like to get paid, right? You probably have monthly rent due if you're in a facility, okay? So you should know your weekly, monthly, and annual costs. You want to make sure you think of everything, right? If you have rent for your business, if you're remote, there's software and or hardware that you need to maintain your virtual operation. You want to take into account marketing and sales costs. And then unanticipated costs, right? You know your business, you know, you should know what it costs you to make your art or to run a class. But then make sure you factor in a contingency, right? I think if you can do it, 10% of your budget as a contingency line is pretty conservative, but it's a good number to have in there. It is almost impossible to nail down all of your numbers perfectly, right? Because things change, right? I buy a lot of fuel for our company, and I base our budget, we based our budget on the fuel costs now, right? Whatever I'm paying now. I don't know in 6 months if fuel is going to be the same, more expensive, less expensive, right? So carrying a contingency helps you not get blindsided by unanticipated cost increase, right? Who knew coming out of COVID that salaries would become so much higher, right? If you were a business that had planned on only paying $15 an hour because that's the state's minimum wage, and then all of a sudden nobody's going to work for $15 an hour, most people aren't going to work for $17 an hour anymore. So where are you finding that money? Okay. There are templates that can help you create an income statement, balance sheets, cash flow. QuickBooks is a really good way to run a small business. If this is not your wheelhouse, finding somebody to help you set it up is worth the investment, because if it's set up properly, you can figure out how to maintain it. But if you don't set it up properly, it can get very frustrating, especially when you have to file your taxes and stuff. So this is an area where it is good to budget for maybe somebody to come in and set it up for you. So some of the financial statements that we talk about are income statements, which show your revenue and expenses over a given period. They'll show your profit and loss. Sometimes they're called the P&L, profit and loss statement. Your balance sheet is how much equity you have in the business, right? What do you own versus what do you owe? Assets versus liabilities. So assets minus liabilities equal equity. You want your asset number to be larger than your liability number, or you don't have any equity. If your assets are less than your liability, then you have negative equity. Okay. Cash flow statements is when revenue is collected and when expenses are paid. Okay. Cash coming in greater than cash going out means you have a positive cash flow. Cash coming in less than cash flowing out is a negative cash flow. there are gonna be times when you have a negative cash flow, right? What you wanna get, and you may have to budget in to know that, okay, after Christmas, nobody goes shopping. So January is a very tough month to sell art. So my expenses may exceed what I take in that month. But if I did really well in December, I can even that out by saying I know I'm gonna go negative in January, but I did extremely well in December. Okay. And when cash is low, you need a contingency plan to access funds for solvency. So a lot of times you'll have a credit line, or you will have a credit card maybe that you use for the business that you pay off when cash is better. You want to identify those gaps or negative cash flow and adjust as required. Okay. So that part there makes up your 15 to 20 pages, right? There are going to be things that you want to have in addition to that. These would be your appendix. Okay, you would not count these in the 15 to 20 pages, but sometimes the banks will specifically ask for things like 3 to 5 years worth of back tax finance. Okay. They might pull your credit history, or they might ask you to provide your credit history. Product pictures, letters of reference, depending, maybe not so much in the art area, but if you were going to be starting a business, so maybe in the dance field, they may ask for references that you actually are going to be able to open this business and keep it functioning. Resumes of key employees. If you need any sort of licensing, so I think with body art, tattoos, you have to be licensed. So any kind of licensing that you need to open that kind of business. If you need equipment leases, any kind of permits that you need, patents, they may ask for some receipts to show backup, bank statements. If you have a contract, like a hotel has contracted you to create the artwork for all of their hotel rooms. So that shows that you're going to have income coming in for a while. They'll want to see something like that. And then I have credit history on here twice. Sorry about that. Both your personal and business credit history. Okay. Remember, especially with small businesses, the owner is hard to differentiate from the business itself sometimes. And especially for a startup, they're absolutely going to want to see your own personal credit information. But as the business grows and becomes more and more of its own entity, your personal information becomes less important. Now, if you have to, for some reason, list everything that's on here or the majority of things that's on here, you might want to do a table of contents at the front of this appendix, just to make sure that they know that you've included everything. Now, the lean startup is the simplified version of what we just went through. But if you have 3 to 5 years worth of financial history, that this is not going to work for a bank. Okay. But it's looking at key partnerships, right? Who else are you working with to run the business? What are your key activities? Okay. So really focusing on how you're going to sell or how you're going to use technology. What are your key resources, right? How can you leverage resources to create value for the customer? They're still going to care about what your assets are, including staff or capital or your intellectual property of art. They want you to leverage business resources that might be available. So I mentioned women's earlier, but there's women's, veterans, Native Americans, and we have hub zone businesses, and New Bedford has a hub zone. But I think it's strictly around the maritime pier. So it may not apply to anybody who's looking to do art, but there is a hub zone business in New Bedford. They would also be looking for a value proposition, right? So what value are you planning on bringing? Because remember, this is a startup, so you probably don't have a lot of other data. how will customers react with your business? Is it automated or personal, online or in person? And talk about the customer experience, okay? These customer segments, you know, looking at, this is your marketing, where's your target market, and who will you serve? Now, why would you do this, right? Why would you go through all of this, right? Why would you want a business plan, right? So it helps with strategic planning, right? It helps you think through and clarify the ideas of your business, the scope of your business, and it really puts a very fine point on how much time, money, and resources you need. Okay, so a lot of the questions that Temple brought up are really good things to be thinking about in this business plan, no matter what you do with it, are forcing you to think about that. Okay. It offers you the opportunity to evaluate ideas. So if you have 2 or 3 ways you could go about doing the business, kind of do a rough business plan for each one, and it can help you flush out what is probably the most feasible path to move forward on, or the one with the highest chance of success. Right? Research and recruiting. Okay, so we've talked a lot about research and it helps you make strategic decisions. This business plan will show you what you need to do to make strategic decisions in the future, and then you continue to research to continue to come up with strategic decisions. It can also help you with recruiting, okay? Because if you have managed to articulate your brand and your vision and your mission clearly and concisely, you can communicate that to new hires and build confidence in your venture. Okay? If everybody is rowing in the same direction, you will get much better buy. If you are looking for partnerships or need a partnership for this business, a business plan is a great tool to use to bring the partners on board, because it's a document that shows them you've thought this through. And some things like E4All or Shark Tank, right? There are competitions that can get you money or investment, money, capital for submitting your business plan in a competition. And so there is some financial gain that can happen. Now, if you want to have a standout business plan, avoid over optimism, right? I cannot stress enough. It has to be based in reality, okay? You also don't want to lowball, right? You don't want to grossly underestimate, but if you have to pick a way to go, it's always better to underestimate than overestimate, right? You can always figure out how to spend the more money you made. It's very hard to figure out how to replace the money you didn't make, okay? Proofreading. I cannot stress enough how important spelling, punctuation, grammatical errors, what a turnoff they are when you're reading these, okay? It shows a lack of professionalism if you find a spelling error in the beginning of your business proposal, right? And now they're focused on the mistakes you made, and maybe you can't, how can you run a business if you can't even write up a plan? Now, in the reality is you could be a great businessman and a crappy writer, but the outside polished picture is you want to show that you're a professional from the very beginning. So if you are not a strong writer and you are not friends with a strong writer who will help you do this, hiring somebody may be worth it, especially depending on how much you're looking for that investment to be. Okay. And then there's free resources. Okay. So SCORE, for those of you in Fall River, SCORE should still be based out of the Chamber building in Fall River. It is a group of retired entrepreneurs and business owners who come in and help serve as mentors for new business owners. Okay. They will help you put together your business plan. The Small Business Administration will also help. I'm not sure where the closest SBA center is to us here. I know for a fact there is a SCORE office in Fall River, and those guys are great. There's a bunch of guys and girls, but there's a bunch of people there who do a really good job helping you. Even if they don't know your particular business, they know what you should at least have in there, and they can maybe find somebody who does know your business. So you want to avoid some things. We already talked about spelling and grammar. I throw it down at the bottom just because I cannot emphasize enough that's bad. But sometimes it's just a bad business idea, right? It may be too risky for potential investors, or it's too expensive, or there's no market, right? So it can be a great idea. It just may not do well in a risk society. Okay, so maybe you can make it smaller, scale it down so that there's not so much risk. But you want to aim for ideas that require low startup costs and can show that they are successful quickly. You should always have an exit strategy, right? Whether it's to continue to expand the business, spin off parts of the business. How can your investors leave the business with maximum profits, right? They want to know that. If I give you $500,000 to get this business up and running, when I'm ready to get my money and get out, right? I'm done being an investor. How does that happen? Okay. You want to make sure that your team is balanced, right? I'm sure you all have amazing skills and art and what you want to do. But your product is important. Your team is what takes you over the top, right? How do I make this work so that it really truly showcases that you can't possibly be expected to be good at everything. So how do you have the people who need to help you? Okay. People do not put financial projections in. They will forget a bank statement, right? Balance sheets, cash flow. You need to get all of that in there because they do need to see it. I know it's personal information a lot of times, but the banks need that in order to understand what they're getting into. Okay. And so the bottom line is business plans are important for the business of all sizes, right? They are how you can define where you want to go. And to grow your business, you need a vision. And you need to give yourself the roadmap, which is your business plan, to set you up for success. So final thoughts. This is not easy, right? I'm not going to sugarcoat this and say, oh yeah, now that you've sat through this, you can bang one out tonight and you'll be good to go. It takes work, right? But they are critical for starting a business or expanding a business. And they're just as critical for you as the business owner, because just the thoughtful questions that Temple put out there to say, how do I do this? Is starting you thinking. Okay? And this business plan, you should be able to answer all the questions when this is done. And so it has forced you to think through everything. And if you want to expand, this shows that you have the capacity to do that. There are tools to help you with everything these days, right? Google business plans, Google creating graphics, Google how to sync your financial data, right? There are tools on the web that can help you with everything. And there's a lot of software that has templates and tutorials. It's still going to take time, but certainly there are tools out there that can help you make, at least gather your thoughts and get everything in. They're not going to write the plan for you. They're not going to know your specifics, but they will make sure that you get everything in there that you need. And the sooner that you can clarify where you want to go, identify what's stopping you, find those resources you need, and evaluate the viability of your idea and the growth plan, the faster you are on your way to getting your business up and running and successful. Okay, because at the end of the day, we don't just want you to all start a business. We want you to start a business that is successful, that becomes something that can support you. Okay. And we're to the end of my material and we're up to sharing questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I thought I just saw a question pop up. Okay. Yes, it is okay to mention roadblocks that you thought of. The way I would handle them is to say that what I recognize that either this is something I need to address, or we've identified this as a roadblock and here is how we are starting to work on that so that it will not be a roadblock down the road. Okay. Any other questions?
Hey, thank you so much. Oh, sorry, we have an echo. I wanted to ask about, so this is probably a situation that a lot of the individual artists might be in, where if you're a sole proprietor, you're not employing anyone, you're running something very small from your home. At what point do you want to register your business with the state or officially?
Well,
yeah.
Are you collecting sales tax?
I will be.
Yes. So there you go.
Okay.
So you want to be registered because you're collecting sales tax. Right?
Mhm.
So if all else fails, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts will figure out how to find out where you are.
Okay.
But you can register your business and be selling things without a business plan, right? The business plan really is to help you grow your business and or go to a bank and say, I'm ready to not be working in my house and making things and just getting by. I'm ready to take my vision and share it with a wider audience.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? All right, well, I think next week I am doing project management, so I don't know if any of you have signed up for that as well, but it was a pleasure to have all of you here. I have got everyone's names and I will pass that on to BCC, and I will stay on if anybody has any questions, but if not, you are free to drop off.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome. I'm sorry I picked on you so much, but I kind of understand a dance studio more than other things.
Oh,
So
no worries.
that was an easy one for me to incorporate in as an example.
Yes. And I'm glad that you did too, because it gave me, something to envision. And I took a lot of notes tonight, so I'm very thankful. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Maybe we'll see you in some of the other classes.
Yes, I will. I will be at all the classes in the next couple of weeks.
All right. Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right, take care.